Glenn Pallister. Well, straight talk, mate. It's about fucking time.
Mate, it's great to be here at last.
Oh my God, I can't fucking believe it. I actually can't believe you're actually sitting there in front of me. But I was just saying early on that I've gone from a left brain conversation to a right brain conversation. I've gone from a airline pilot captain who was full of so much logic and talks about resilience and things like that, and being able to rescue a plane QF-32 from crashing, to talking to Glenn Pallister, who's like probably one of the fastest right brain people I've ever known in my life. It's pretty amazing and responsible for the Footy Show. And it's a good time to talk because we're going to release this, in a couple of days' time. The grand final's on the weekend. Start up.
Yep.
Any predictions for the grand final?
Oh, look, I'm massively disappointed that there's not a Sydney team in the grand final.
Yep.
And that was always a wishing list thing for us because we do our massive...
Us being Channel 9?
Yeah, because we do our massive Thursday night footy show at the Entertainment Centre or wherever with 10,000 people.
I remember those shows. They were great.
They were huge events, mate. And there's a lot of tickets to sell to make your money back on what you're spending.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't a Sydney team in it, we're going, are we going to sell this? But they travel, and the Storm fans travel and the Broncos fans travel. So, look, I think, I caught up with Madge a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
He's a ripper of a bloke.
He's killing it.
I'd love to see him win it. But, mate, I've still got a deep-seated hatred for Queensland. I was
Me too.
brought up as a Blue. We know together.
Yeah,
we were
exactly.
there, mate, back in the Wizard days.
Yep.
We were there.
Yep.
First day we first met.
Totally.
So, it's... and it's Melbourne, New South Wales. No, it's not. So, mate, I'm very much on the fence, and I probably couldn't give a fat rat's who wins.
Yeah, and for me, what's good about it is it's two totally different style of plays. So I'm actually very curious to see which style of play wins. Is it the Bellamy sort of give him an inch, kick him into a corner, bash him until they make a mistake, and then rely on my spine to put it away? Or is it going to be
the razzle dazzle?
Brisbane razzle dazzle.
Yeah,
I've
got a huge amount of respect for Melbourne. I went down there with Bellamy one day. He got me down there when I was doing the footy show just to show me around, and it's one of the most professional organisations you'll ever meet. You'll ever see.
Yeah,
and I'm a massive Billy Slater fan. I signed Billy at the footy show and spent a lot of time with him, developing him and working with him. And he's one of the best rugby league brains on television now.
and improving through the state of origin as he does.
He's a beauty. So
let's talk about it, Glenn. We go back a long time. So, mate, I think I sponsored the state of origins. This is how far back we go. Was in 2000 and no, it was 1999.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be before 2000.
It was 1998 or 99.
Yeah,
because I tell you what, it was 98 because we took over the sponsorship. It was during the Super League war. Tours had dropped out. There was no sponsor for New South Wales. I got word of that, and I jumped in literally the week before the game started, and I got it for cheap. Basically, that's the only way I was ever going to be able to get it in those days. And then later on, Kerry bought in, Channel 9 bought in, and then of course the Footy Show exposure became one of our biggest. The way that most responsibly built our brand was being exposed to the Footy Show through you being the producer of the Footy Show. In fact, you being the ideas behind the original Footy Show. So I want to go back for those people who don't know you. Everyone knows who was on the Footy Show, but they don't know who's the dude behind the camera, sort of thing, and pulling all the strings. And you were the puppet master. How did you come about coming up with an idea and calling it the Footy Show or starting the Footy Show? What was the deal?
Okay, so in 1994, we were all over at Widewater Sports. We'd all been through. I'd started at 9 in 84. Was a cameraman on the midday show for 8 or 9 years with Ray Martin. And wanted to get into producing, so I was hanging around the MTV cottage and getting little shifts in the afternoon and became a producer down there. And then
you should explain what the cottage means.
Okay, the great cottage culture at the old Channel 9 site at Willoughby. There was the main studio building and offices upstairs in the lot, and surrounded by it was probably 15 cottages.
Little houses.
Little houses, yeah. And Kerry Packer owned them all bar 2. And there was a bloke over near 60 Minutes on the other side that wouldn't sell. And there was a bloke next door to us who wouldn't sell. And he was an old trots caller. And he had like he used his cottage for storage of tapes. So he had all these old tapes of trotters, but he was also a complete lunatic and had Bing Crosby speaking to him. And one day I'd gone out the front of the cottage and he painted it yellow. And because Bing had come to him in a dream and told him to
Yeah,
paint the
being by
cottage.
the stage is dead, of course.
Oh, mate, long gone. And so he then I start talking, and I've just got engaged, and I'm telling him that he said, "Oh, what's your wife's maiden name?" Don't know why he asked me, and I said, "Oh, Lillis," and he's like jolted because Bing's real name was Harry Lillis. So, mate, I'd been sent by Bing. So this lunatic, was out the front waiting just about every other day to see what else I was going to tell him and other info I was going to give him. But yeah, this cottage culture there was these houses around and the shows were housed in the cottages.
Yeah,
So
like Current Affair had its own.
Current Affair had its
its own
own, Today Show, Water Sports, Footy Show, 60 Minutes, the Sunday Show when that was around, and we all had these cottages. And it was fantastic, fantastic culture.
It was an amazing culture, and this is
Yeah.
pre-Ginge. It was Ginge with them was like only in his 30s. So we're talking about 94.
Yeah.
Right through. David never took over to about probably
Early
mid 2000s.
Yeah, would have been, yeah.
So
So I'd been down at MTV, hanging around there, got a gig as a producer, and MTV folded because cable satellite television, subscription television came to Australia. So MTV used to be on Channel 9 late Friday and Saturday nights with Richard Wilkins, and it was fantastic. Great grounding, for a young rock and roller, it was fantastic. So we all then got moved across to other areas, and I ended up over at Water Sports. And at that stage, Gary Burns was the head of sport. Melbourne had a footy show banging around, and it was Burns' idea who was our old EP of
Melbourne had
Midday.
the AFL footy show.
AFL footy show, and Burnsy was the old EP of the Midday show, and he was now head of sport at 9, and it was his idea to have a rugby league footy show. So they cobbled together everyone out of the Water Sports Cottage and said, look, let's do 4 shows in the final series of 1994. It was Fatty, Sterlo, I think from memory, Singo.
Blocker was it? Wasn't Block?
Ray Hadley there was a mix. Bob Fulton was on the panel, so it was a mix of these guys over these 4 shows. And literally at the end of it, Fatty, particularly in Sterlo, just went, well, there's no way in the world that'll ever come back. That was just red hot disaster.
Was Fatty like the lead?
Yeah. So Fatty was there. Sterlo was off to his left, and then you had Singo, and the other guys over there. I think Singo did. I heard Hadley speaking recently. I think Singo did like 1 show and said, "Fuck, that's not for me." And then bizarrely, the network loved it. People loved it. They just went, "Wow, this is real." Like these guys aren't, actors. They're not
a polished
hosts.
host.
No, it's like exactly, what you're seeing is what you're getting.
Well, what was your role? Producing?
I was just an associate producer on it, just
yeah,
a junior, just pulling stuff together.
Yeah,
So we had a bit of a chat over the summer break, and they said, "Look, we're going to go to air with this thing as a prime time show." And everyone's like, "Oh, fucking what?"
Yeah, well, you should explain the importance of prime time.
Prime time's big time. That's anywhere between 6:30 and 10:30 on a weeknight, and a Sunday night. Saturday night's our quiet night, which is bizarrely in the UK is their main night. But they're the nights, and you can get a slot in there. Big advertising, big numbers, lots of eyeballs.
Especially during the winter period. So
100%.
Because it's darker, everybody tends to watch TV earlier and for longer.
Yeah. So they talked about the idea of this footy show, and so I went to Burnsy and said, "Mate, this is me. I love it. I'm all over it. I love rugby league. It's we got some crazy ideas." He said, "Mate, go away and come up with a few things." So we came back in the start of the new year. I started as an associate producer on it, and I'd come up with like the ideas, the anti-ads, 60 seconds with Sterlo, those sort of things. So I went out and produced those and directed those on site with the guys in those first couple of years, which was just that was. You watch the outtakes of like the Yo Play ad and those things, mate. We were just having the best time, and these guys were they were one take wonders, and if we fucked it up in one take and didn't do it, we wouldn't do another one.
Yeah.
That was the one that'd go to air.
Yeah, and it didn't matter because
Didn't matter.
that's because the audience want that.
Yeah. And so over 3 years or so, the executive producers changed, and I ended up taking it over. I just came up through the ranks in 3 years and was running it by about probably the year that you guys
Around
came.
about 98, 99.
Yeah. I think I took about 98. I took it over as the executive producer, and David Leckie got me up there in his office and said, "You're the youngest EP we've ever done." And he's throwing a cricket ball either side of my head, bouncing it off the wall. So what do you think you're fucking worth, son? One of those great negotiations.
David Leckie being the CEO of Channel 9
Was
at
the
the
CEO
time.
of Channel 9 who went over to Channel 7, is unfortunately no longer with us, but was a great mentor to me.
Wild bastard.
That's why we got on.
Yeah,
you
totally
know?
wild.
Yeah, totally. Mate,
Especially on a Friday afternoon.
Mate, you would go into that. He had a bar that ran off the side of his office, and I was, so 90, 98, mate, I probably would have been, 20, early mid-20s, mid-20s, if that, like around there. And, these guys, it's like Peter Meakin, Leckie, like these legends of television. And in those days, to earn your stripes as an executive producer was a big deal. Like, I used to stargaze when they'd go up for the EP's lunch up in the boardroom and go, fuck, one day I want to be one of those guys, So I had that aspiration and that drive that I wanted to be in that crew. And then, you'd get wheeled out, from Leckie's office into the bar. And there's I remember going, I was doing a renewal of one deal, and we went to Peacock Gardens.
As an advertising deal?
No, as in my deal.
Your deal,
As
right.
in my contract.
Now, Peacock Gardens is a legendary place.
Legendary Chinese restaurant in Crow's Nest where...
I don't think is it still there?
Yeah, still there. Matthew isn't there anymore. He's passed it on to his daughter or someone, or his niece. But yeah, this was like the place. It was Channel 9 boardroom.
Yeah.
In one corner you had Leckie over there. You had Peter Meakin, the current affair guys there. We were doing sport deals at another table. It was just fantastic.
And in those days you drank too. I mean,
Heavily.
You could drink as much as you wanted.
Absolutely.
It was halfway expected.
Mate, absolutely. And Leckie takes me up to Peacock Gardens to do him a new deal. So we're sitting there, and there's 3 or 4 bottles of wine and a couple of numbers pushed across the table, and he's going, son, you'll be a fucking fool if you don't take this deal. All of those, great
Gamesmanship.
Yeah, very soft, negotiating tactics. And I went back to the cottage half slugged and rang my wife and said, wow, this is a pretty good deal. And she said, yeah, okay, what do you think? I said, yeah, it's pretty good, yeah. So, his PA at the time rings me and said, David, just wanted to let you know you've got till 5 o'clock to accept that deal. No problems at all. It's about 4:30, right? I'm going, okay, I'll just...
Full of drink?
Yeah, full of drink, couple of coffees, couple of bit of water, sober up a bit. And so I wander up at about 5 to 5 and open the door, and there's Leckie sitting there with the then general manager and a bottle of Jack Daniels on the table. And he goes, are we fucking drinking or are we not? I said, we're drinking. Right, so sit down, congratulations, sign your new deal. Opens the door up, and there's like 20, of these execs who I've just, looked up to for years. And he's pushed me and he goes, Glennie's just re-signed for 3 years. And it was the theatre of it all. It was wonderful, but it was heady days, And
did they give you intellectual room to do what you wanted?
100%. I very rarely had a CEO or an owner, and we can talk about Kerry, in any shape or form, tell me what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. We got our wings clipped a few times on a few things that we probably shouldn't have done and things that went awry on air, but that's live television. And if there was something that had come off tape that I'd made a decision on, I stood by that. And if I wore a bit of shit on it, well, that's what we wore on it. But it was made in the best interests of, being real and, making the show. So
maybe you could have just quickly explain the format of the show, and one, and two, what was the objective? So, what were the values you were trying to appeal to in terms of your audience? What are you trying to get out of the talent?
Yep.
If I could call them that. What were you trying to get out of Fatty, etc., the talent that sort of spoke to your audience?
I always described the show, particularly when I was running it, as an entertainment show with a spine of rugby league. It always had to go back to rugby league, and whether they're dressing up, whether they're taking the piss, whether they're out on motorbikes or bungee jumping, it was footballers doing it. And then we'd come back and we'd have a segment on a player behind the scenes or a charity feature story or something that, always brought the show back to the game. So that was important. And getting women to watch.
That's true, by the way, Glenn, because women loved the show.
Totally. We had a 50-50 split on the audience. And, I remember sitting down with some of the sales guys at one stage and saying, stop pitching the show to bourbon and ute companies. Like, there are 50% women watching this show.
It was like a voyeurism. I mean, into the men's world of rugby league for women. Like it was like them getting into the locker room somehow.
Yeah, and like we had segments like Ryan Girdler's Their House,
Yeah.
and Girds would go and visit Fletch or
Yeah.
whoever, and it'd be a fun segment, but they'd see how these guys lived. They'd see the other side of them. They weren't the thugby league players that they thought they were. They were good blokes, and that was a big thing too. It was building the trust with the players. Like, we sat on a lot of stuff. We sat on a lot of stuff. We weren't, we weren't a gossip column. We weren't a rugby league news column trying to break.
You weren't trying to pull people's pants down.
Never.
There's more supporting them than
100%. If the game was good, we were good. So I never quite understood why stakeholders in the game would, lead with front pages or stories trying to destroy what was their bread and butter.
Well, that's probably good for you because I think people get a little bit over all the shitty stories and they actually just want to go to something that is entertainment. Because a lot of the journalists who do those sorts of stories are taking the view that they're breaking news type journalists, investigative. Your whole thing was, I'm not investigating anything.
No.
I'm going to entertain you with rugby league.
Yeah.
And rugby league talent.
And we'd get plenty of good stories. Like we did some beautiful feature stories, and that they were brought to our attention, whether it was, as I mentioned before, whether it was a charity or whether it was a player who was going through a rough trot or, interesting human interest stories as well. So that was really important. And then I guess getting back to your question on the talent, just keeping them real, Mark, just making sure that bloke at the bar could look across and go, shit, but for the grace of God, that could be you or me sitting up there.
Yeah.
If I was a good footy player, that could be me. We played all right and just keeping them real, and we never had auto cue. We never had, we didn't really have scripts.
It wasn't scripted properly.
No, mate. It was loose. Like, I had a rundown and, I always wanted it to
Were you in there? Did they have bugs in there?
Later on, not early on. And that was a fucking nightmare because I had to go through poor old Tony Chalmers, former Parramatta and Balmain winger, who was our floor manager. And I'd just tell him to walk in and stop.
He's
Fatty.
at Foxtel now, isn't
he? Yeah, great bloke.
Yeah.
And I'd just tell Tony to walk in. Mate, just go and stop Fatty, for fuck's sake. Stop him.
Yeah.
Walk in. I don't care. Walk in.
So did you work on the basis too, though? I mean, when you did the Footy Show, like Fatty was like the main host.
Yep.
Was it a bit? He was a bit like the not so funny guy. We laughed at him, but he wasn't naturally funny. Was he more like a straight guy, and then you had to put someone next to him who was funny or funnier?
No. I found that his natural humour was a big appeal.
Right.
And in the early years, Sterlo was his rudder, if you like.
Him more the straight guy.
Yeah. Well, just the guy that could get things back on track.
Yeah.
Sam had Eddie in Melbourne.
Yeah, but Eddie, that show was different.
Totally.
It was so straight laced, sort of. Other than
Sam going off. Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, it wasn't sort of like the Sydney Footy Show was sort of more crazy.
100%. They were completely two different beasts. Like if they put up the team cards and people tuned in to see that on Melbourne, who was in and who was out. Mate, if we did that, we'd hear crickets.
Yeah.
Like that was the last thing that we would do. Like we'd be having I'd be sending them off to, bungee jump in New Zealand or something.
Well, can we talk about the Vomitron? Because to me, where did that idea come from? Because I reckon that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like, my kids still love it, and they're all in their 40s now. But it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. The Vomitron. It was particularly Fatty, sort of like dry reaching. Where'd that idea come from,
mate? We were just looking around for things to push the boundaries with. What can we do to hurt them without killing them?
Yeah.
Because it makes great telly.
Yeah.
And we went down to Perisher and, we put Fatty on skis and he'd never been on skis before in his life. And we're standing there doing the opening stand up and he's skiing backwards. He can't stop himself. And gold, we're on. And Kerry sent us down there. Kerry Packer, rang me and he said, I need, and that's when he brought Ginge in. He brought David Gingell in to be his head of synergy. That's how Ginge came into Nine. And because Kerry said, I need all my businesses,
my assets.
Oh yeah, talking to each other.
Yeah,
They're not talking to each other. And I think at that stage, Threadbow was the go-to. And he said to me, I need you blokes to do something in Perisher. And
because they owned a resort in Perisher.
Yeah, he owned Perisher, yeah. And he goes, I need you blokes to go down there and do something. And, because get people, into it.
So you talk to Kerry, would he sort of ring up and say, hey, Glenn?
Oh, those stages it would come through David.
Yeah.
But I had some great
Lecky, as in
interactions.
Lecky?
No, Gingell.
Ginge, yeah.
Yeah, that was around Ginge time. Yeah, didn't have much to do with Kerry when Lecky was there, but yeah, when Ginge was there, absolutely, yeah. And so, and I'll tell you a great story in a second on how we really got together with Kerry. But yeah, we went down and did the snow show, and I remember Michael Healy, the head of television, ringing me the next
Michael
morning.
Healy was head of programming.
Yeah, well, he's now head of TV over there, but yeah, head of programming.
Still there now.
Rang me the next morning and was reading me the ratings out, and I was standing in the car park at Perisher. I thought he was reading me the fucking Melbourne Footy Show ratings, who normally did like, those huge numbers on a Thursday night, and they just tuned in to see us in the snow, and they loved it. So tick, that worked. So yeah, it was sort of like, we'd find stuff to put them out of their comfort zone. And, God love him, particularly Fatty, who I love dearly. And I caught up with him a couple of weekends ago, he and Sterlo. They would just, he'd bitch and moan, but he'd do it. And he would do it with great gusto. And, mate, he had a bit of Benny Hill about him, the fat.
That's a good point. It is a bit of Benny Hill.
Oh, 100%.
It was a little bit like the Benny Hill show.
Yeah. Well, mate, I grew up as a student of Hogues, Strop, John and Singo. I loved all the shit they did in that Australian way of irreverence. I loved that. And I was also a massive Benny Hill fan. Kenny Everett a bit, but Benny Hill. And so there's a lot of that from me. That's where that was coming from.
When you talk Benny Hill, I got the tune in my head now. And when I was a teenager, that was a show my mum and dad watched on, I think it was Thursday night at 9 o'clock. And I was I was allowed to stay up to 9 o'clock and watch the Benny Hill show but it was full of ridiculous shit.
100%.
Just ridiculous stuff.
Oh, yeah, ridiculous. Lots of innuendo.
You wouldn't get away with it today.
Oh, mate, we wouldn't get away with doing the Footy Show today.
Oh, really?
No way in the world. Not the way we did it and the way we'd want to do it. No way. No way.
Not because of disrespect to women, but more...
Oh, just too many snowflakes, mate.
Yeah.
We'd just offend everybody.
Yeah.
We were offending people back then, and they were a bit thicker skinned, but mate, way too crepe skin now. We'd burst it on the first night. And it would come back not in its true self. So that was sort of the
well, what's the Kerry story?
Mate. So I just must have taken over the show. It was around that sort of late 90s or so. And I had pretty long hair and I had earrings and I dressed, a bit like a cowboy. And Peter Meakin, who's head of current affairs, calls me and he goes, Kerry's asked to have a meeting at Park Street with half a dozen of the young guns. And for some unknown reason, you're on the list. I went, great. And he goes, so get yourself down to fucking wardrobe, make yourself look decent. If you need a haircut, get one. We're leaving in an hour. I was like, fuck, I'm going to meet Kerry. Wow, this is going to be great.
Yeah, and just for context, Park Street is where the head office of publishing and broadcasting was.
Where people have been hung out windows.
Yeah, but it's not where you operated from.
No,
you
we were
operated
over at
Willoughby.
Willoughby, yeah.
Which is where the operations were.
Yep.
But getting called into Park Street was a big deal.
Was a big deal. And usually you weren't going in there for a good reason.
Usually it was a problem.
Yeah. So I rang Burnsy and told Burnsy and he's gone, oh, Jesus. And he said, all right, okay, here's a few tips. So he said, when you get in there, you're going to be in a waiting room. And he said, you're going to look up. And you would know this.
I've been in the room.
He said, you're going to look up. And he said, there's lots of paintings. And he said, there's paintings of big animals killing little animals.
Yeah, no, totally.
And he said, just remember.
No, so, actually, by the way, that is 100% the truth.
Yeah. And he goes, just remember, Kerry's the big animal and you're the little animal.
Yeah. And he'll piss on your leg just to prove that he's the boss.
That's what I'm thinking, Jesus. Okay.
And let it happen.
Yeah, great. And then he said, and then Meakin's giving us a bit of advice on the way over. And he goes, look, there are long pauses sometimes. Don't jump in and fill the pause. Yeah. Just let Kerry have his moment.
But you're not producing the show.
Yep. He goes, he likes to just, have his moment of pausing and thinking and where he's going next. Great. Okay, so we've got all these writing instructions. We get in there, see the paintings, right? So the sphincter's tightened up a bit, right? There's the paintings. So we go into the office and there's the big man, right, with his feet up on the desk.
Cigarette.
No shoes, cigarette. Trying to work out changing the batteries in his hearing aid, right? And I think it was Carol at the time.
Carol,
yeah. She
couldn't hear either.
Mate, so they're over there. This is going on for 5 minutes.
What most people don't realise is he had a buzzer under his desk. We used to buzz on her desk, and the vibration would because she couldn't hear properly. Then she'd come running into his office.
It's so good. So good. Like, I mean, this is TV.
Yeah,
And I'm just like, this is living the dream. And I'd been a cameraman way back in the day with Graham Kennedy and spent a lot of time with Graham. And I would go around after doing Funniest Home videos and sit with Graham and have a bottle of red and just ask him questions and let him tell me stories about in Melbourne tonight and that, and it was wonderful. So this was like the next level of, television royalty. This is the deal. So there's about half a dozen of us in there, and Meakin's down this end, and next to me was Rory Callahan, and Rory was the executive producer of the Footy Show before me, and he just moved up to head of entertainment, and there was a couple of other lizards down the other end, right? So Kerry finally, decides he's going to welcome us after getting the hearing aids ready and a couple of darts and all of that, and starts talking. He's ripped one of the young people from 60 Minutes a new asshole over something that he didn't like. I'm like, shit, this is not going to go so well, right? And then
He does that for practice, huh?
100%. And then he'd said to me, he goes, son, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just taking over the Footy Show, Kerry. Son, your job to me is just to make me fucking laugh on Thursday nights. That's your one job. Done. Excellent. And he goes, get the wog back. I said, pardon? He goes, get the wog back, the funny one. I'm thinking, Mario? And it was Nick Giannopoulos. He wanted me to get Nick Giannopoulos onto the Footy Show, right? Melbourne, no chance, right? So Mario was going in the caravan. That was my man. It was Mario. So for, 2 years, when I'd bump into Kerry or see him, somebody go, son, how are you going with that guy? Have you got him yet? We're still in negotiations. Kerry's do you need me to come in? No, it'll be all good. So this was, sort of how, so I sort of backed off a bit. Okay, well, there you go. So then he says he's talking to Rory about new shows. And Surprise, had just started, which was a celebrity candid camera style show where they did pranks on celebs, hidden camera style. So Kerry quite liked the show, but he hated the name. And he goes, he's really firing up. Fucking surprise. Stupid name. Who fucking walks into a room and says, surprise? And he goes, what else could we call it? And the gun turret's out, like he's doing these ones, right? And everyone's heads are down. And I look up and he locks eyes with me.
A mistake.
And I said, I don't know, Kerry, what about fuck me? I hear Meakin gagging down the end, and everyone's got their heads down, and he just leans across the table, bangs it and starts laughing and goes, what about fuck you, son? Right, back off. So we all bail out there. I got led out by the ear by Meakin over to the Windsor bar across the corner there and downstairs for a couple of stiff drinks. Anyway, Ginge rings me that night, right? And he goes, he said, I heard what went on today. He goes, Kerry thinks you're very fucking funny. And I said, great. So that was the start of my relationship with proper relationship with Kerry. And so when
could have gone awfully wrong.
Could have gone horribly wrong. Could have, but again, right brain.
Play your luck.
Yeah, you just, you shoot your shot.
It's funny, like when you're talking about Dave Gingelin and then you're talking about 2000 and I think 2000 might have been 2000. Anyway, I remember then because I had the Whiz business in those days and I was sponsoring New South Wales, as you probably recall. And David Gingell says to me, mate, because he was head of coordinating all the assets.
Yeah, head of synergy.
So yeah, correct. And one of the assets that Kerry owned was part of 50% of Yellow Wizard, which is my business. So Ginge says, mate, we're going to get you on the Footy Show, and we're gonna pre-record it this week, and it'll be on next week. So, but what we want you to do is come on with the $20,000 in cash in a suitcase. But I couldn't get $20,000, but I just had shitty. You guys did shit paper and put some hundreds or fifties on the top, make it look like I had a big suitcase full
petty
of money.
Cash.
Yeah. Anyway, and we're going to give it away. So it's going to cost me 20 grand for a start. Anyway, and you're giving away to a charity. Something happened.
Yes.
Someone's football club burnt down or something like that.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, cool. So I get on there, and Fatty comes up and he goes,
I know where you're going.
fucking, Mark Boris here, and he's from, he looks close to Block, and fucking, I can't remember, still, Wizard something or other. Completely fucked it up, okay? And what have you. And anyway, it all got pre-recorded, and so I'm watching it at home the following week, and then I ring Ginjo and say, mate, surely they could have fucking edited it. I said, I just paid $20,000 for this. This is bullshit. So I said, mate, if I don't, I'm going to tell Kerry's going to ask me what happened. I'm going to tell Kerry that these guys fucked it up. And and Ginjo goes, no, don't worry. So he must have rung you because the next week they got up there and corrected it. And Fatty goes, Mark Boris generously gave from Wizard Home Loans, generously gave $20,000, and then one of the other, I think it was Block, goes, what do they do, Fatty? Fatty goes, they're one of those thingamajiggots. And
Your research wasn't big.
fucking, and I'm watching on TV again. I fucking ring in and say, "Mate, you fucked up a second time." So I ended up getting 3 shots at it, which is good actually. I ended up getting 3 cracks at it, but I just remember the looseness of the show. And whilst I was cranky because I gave 20 grand away, but I would have been cranky if I had to give $20 away. But because Kerry used to call me I won't say Greek something or other, okay? And,
Yes.
And because I was mean. And I probably am still mean with money. I don't throw money around. And he quite liked that about me, but he used to bag the shit out of me about it. But whilst I was cranky, but I was actually very happy with the style of the show.
Mm. It was real. It was authentic.
It was correct.
Yeah.
And I thought about Fatty actually saying that actually, if he had gone really crisp, Ray Martin style, said this is a home loan business doing mortgage origination, whatever the fuck, it was boring.
Yeah.
Fatty saying what he said actually worked.
Totally. And
in reverse.
Mate, we launched monster.com on there.
Yeah, I remember monster.com.
9MSN.
Yep.
And Sterlo called it 9msn.com. And looks at Fat and Fat goes, oh, I don't know. No one knew anything about the internet. It was
because we're talking about 99, 2000 and that period, and no one knew what the hell was going on.
No, especially those blokes.
Yeah, not a clue.
No. Fatty was yet to discover the joys of the internet. He was still on old school magazines.
But it was a pretty amazing ride for you, mate.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting you talk about Kerry in business. I've got another great story there, and you'll love this as a businessman. So Ginge had like a Christmas drinks, sort of sunset drinks and dinner at his joint for Christmas. And he said, mate, Kerry's coming. I'd love you to come. There'll be about 20 people there, right? So there was quite a few of the 9 staffers in that there. He said, mate, you just sit with Kerry. He loves you. Keep Kerry happy. I said, yep, Neil, you won't be here long, So over I went. And he said, oh, hello, son. How are you? Good. Your family good? Yep, great. Fatty, Sterlo, how are they? Still taking my money? He had a shtick. And he said, how you been? I said, I thought he'd be interested. I said, so I've actually had a bit of an ordinary cholesterol result. And he said, oh, have you, son? And I said, yeah, what are you doing about it? And I said, well, I'm onto I've got a juicer, a Breville juicer. I got one of those. He said, oh, where'd you get that? I said, well, I said, it's quite a story to it. He said, well, tell me.
Not Joe Cross.
No. So he's up there, mate. And it's an Indonesian volcano. In. There's just like smoke. I'm in a smoke haze. And it's Kerry and I and a couple of people sort of sitting on the outskirts trying to get involved. But it's just us. And I'm telling him this story. And I said, well, I live up at Wahroonga. And I said, I went to Kmart at Hornsby. And I said, I went in there and I said, I got the juicer. I said, let's call it $200. And it was a juicer. And I went up to David Jones for something. Oh, I like David Jones. I said, yeah, I went up there. And I said, I saw it on special for 170 with a jug and 6 glasses. Ooh, what did you do, son? I said, well, I went back down to Kmart and I took it back down. And I said to the lady, look, you'll never believe what's happened. My wife's actually rung me and she's bought one. I need to just send this back. I said, no problem. Also, we did an exchange. Then what did you do, son? And he's like, he's just invested. Locked. And this is like, I'm shortening up. This is a half an hour. And Ginge is flitting in and out, poking the bear. And
always been a smart ass.
Always. And I said, what'd you do, son? I said, well, I went back up to the David Jones lady. I said, the lady was lovely. Well, they're lovely staff, aren't they? I said, they're great staff at David Jones. I said, and I explained to her, I said, look, I'd like to get that. And so I took the juicer home with the jug and the extra cups. And it was David Jones. So yeah, he's like drilling me about where I got it from. Oh, very good, son. Well, let me know how all that goes. See you later. And off he goes, right? So at about 7:30 the next morning, my mobile rings and it's Ginge. He goes, mate, I hope you're fucking happy. I said, why? He goes, Kerry's got about 30 people out on the streets to every David Jones trying to find the $170 juicer with the 6 cups and the jug. And I'm saying to Kerry, you can buy an industrial one. Like they make the big ones. You can buy it. He goes, I don't want that one, son. I want that one. I want the one with the cups and the jug. He loved a deal.
And you wouldn't think so either, by the way.
No.
But he's, it's quite amazing when you get to sit with him, like, he's actually very interested in what you're doing.
Totally.
He very rarely had something to tell you. It's rare. I mean, if he was telling you something, usually something you did wrong and you were fucked up and you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, he wanted to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
He was a great learner that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said something interesting then a moment ago, Glenn, where you said that over a half-hour period, because nothing was done quickly.
No. No.
You could, if you went in there for 15 minutes, you could be there for 4 hours.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And you had to suck it up and
Yeah.
and depending on the mood. And maybe you could explain to people what it was like being inside his office, because he had your heart rate
Oh,
immediately goes up.
that'd be the red shagpole carpet.
Yep.
That looked like blood.
Yeah.
And the massive painting behind him of the charging Indian elephants.
Yeah, and photographs of him with Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Bruce Gingell, David's father, like all these really super important people. I remember once I walked into his office, and he had a white shirt on, no tie, like a collared shirt, cotton shirt, no tie. And he had fucking blood all over him. Blood, bleeding. His shirt was wet with blood. And I said, I went there for, like, I used to go and see him once a month, and I went there for a review, like a monthly review, just to see where we're going, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him with a fucking shock. I looked like one of, because he had 6 Rottweilers or something. Remember he had all these Rottweilers at his house? I thought it looked like he'd been attacked by his fucking dogs. And he said to me, I said, "You okay?" He said, "No, son, just been to the skin cancer clinic." And I said, I come straight here. Because he used to never get to work till like 1 o'clock or something. He got in late. But he literally had blood. I'm not, and it was the most shocking thing like I've ever seen. Like
How's the other bloke?
No, Joe. I thought he was fucking lying to me. I thought something's going on here. Like he might have had a punch up. Remember, he had a famous punch up with Warren Anderson in his office one time there. And legend goes that he had a gun in his safe.
Yeah.
And once they stole the bullion out of his safe, I had this sort of imagination, some weird, totally fucking weirds going on. But he was one of that experience for you. And the experience of hanging out with David Leckie, Peter Meakin, David Gingell, having experiences with all these people, what was it like for you, do you think, in terms of like forming your habits and forming the way you wanted to think as a creator?
Incredibly important. I remember like it was yesterday, Gary Burns. I remember like it was yesterday, Gary Burns, drilling into me 3 letters, ATD. ATD.
What's that mean?
Attention to detail. He said, get your fucking number plates changed. ATD.
Yeah.
ATD. And that was always something that stuck with me. And as much as we made that show look like it could come off the rails at any stage, there was a hell of a lot of work went into it to make sure it didn't.
By you, though?
By me and my team.
Yeah. Not necessarily by the talent.
No. God, no.
They're flying by the seat of their pants all the time.
100%, yeah. But that was the beauty of it. And I, had great faith in the content that we had and the people that we had around us, whether that was the crew on the floor, the director, whoever, that we would we would be able to, get this show back on the rails if it started to live.
Did it ever feel like that?
100%. Yeah.
And that was part of the edge of the show, though.
Yeah.
Because that's what you wanted to feel like.
And the appeal. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Live television. There's nothing like it.
By the way, I forgot about that. It is live TV.
Yeah. There's no delay.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing is going out there straight away. And
do you remember you used to put things out in the car park?
Oh, mate, it was enormous.
You go and do kick footballs in the car park.
Kick for cash every week in the car park.
Yeah.
We had the Nitro Circus guys out there doing jumps and spinning and motorbikes, and Fat crashed the motorbike. Daryl Broman ended up sideways
I
on a motorbike.
forgot Daryl Broman was on there, big man.
Great man. His segment with the kids later on, Small Talk with the Big Man.
Yeah, that was great.
Mate,
I forgot about that.
So I used to always do a really, really long first segment, because let's say we're on air at 9:30. You're making that decision, am I going to go to bed? Am I not going to go to bed? So I would do a 30, 35 minute, sometimes 40-minute first segment. And I'd have Ginge ring me, you don't fucking work at the ABC, mate. We need a commercial break. Trust me. Just trust me. And we'd get them up to past that 10 o'clock mark. And I would put Small Talk on at the start of the second segment every week. And so it would make them wait, for the parents and the kids saying, stay up, righto, watch Small Talk. We want to watch Small Talk. And you got them. You got them by that stage. And, 10:30 sort of the cutoff of, ratings read.
Yeah.
I got them. By 10 past 10, we got Small Talk on. 2 more segments. We're down to 10:30, and then we remote it through that back end up to about 11 o'clock. And that was a formula.
How did it go as a revenue stream?
Enormous, because you had great big brand sponsors who would sign on at the beginning of the year. And we had some really, really good ones through the year. Like Sportsbet were amazing. They were fantastic sponsors. We had Nissan, Jim Beam, like big brands, big names, and they were major brand sponsors. So they'd sign on at a premium at the start of the year. So that money's in the bank. And then we'd look after them internally through the year with segments and whatnot each week.
Like in program.
Yeah. Then you've got your ad revenue in the breaks, which they sold for a premium, even though I was not getting the first one till after 10 o'clock. So, but that was a good battle to have, I enjoyed having those battles with the...
So you're saying that you would be sort of arguing with
the sales execs and the CEOs of the time. We want that first commercial break.
I don't want a commercial yet.
I want a commercial break in early, and I would fight the no.
What was the thinking about that? Why
my
not?
thinking was that if we gave them the chance to go to bed at 9:45, they'd go.
So don't let them go.
No, don't let them go.
Hold them
for that first fucking half an hour. Get them to 10 o'clock, then put an ad in, put small talk at the top of segment 2, because they'll come back and watch that, and then put something, tease and promote great shit. Daredevil dude's coming up later. They're doing the Vomitron, which got to get back to the Vomitron story.
Yeah.
The Vomitron, that's coming up later on, and just tease them and get them hanging on. But which probably wasn't the greatest thing for the sales guys when they're selling those commercial breaks. But there was enough coming in and revenue-wise, and then we do in-show promotions. So we always had the opportunity on a second tier. So let's just say Yellow Brick Road wanted to come in and do.
We did.
I needed $50,000 in the bank. So mate, let's do a passing comp or a wood chopping comp.
Will you come in and talk about it?
Yeah,
or just present the money or something.
And you come in. We'll do a little yarn, on you. We'll do something. Give you $50,000 worth of value on air.
Yep.
You give me $50,000 cash. Happy days. And we do a segment based around that. So
hey, just so people understand how that worked. So, like, if you did a 30-second ad, had a 30-second ad, it might have cost you $25,000 those days through your sales guys.
Yep.
But if you got on there and you did an in-program segment, and
I could go 5 minutes.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, so you got like 10 30-second ads.
Yeah.
But you got usually I can take the viewer. I got much better value
Totally.
by doing that, and people could say, well, that's the bloke from the company, the Homeland company, and then you got endorsement by the celebrities who are like Fatty and everybody like that. The value of that is crazy.
Yeah, which is well and above it beyond a live read or something.
Pretty powerful though.
Absolutely, mate. And there's not a lot of shows that could do that, and so that program integration and sponsor integration was a big part of what we did. And at one stage, Rico, the great Luke Ricketson, was our head of sales he was doing our sales for the Footy Show. So it was wonderful working with him. I love Rico, and we were able to come up with plenty of stuff. I go, Rico, mate, I need this. You go, great, get onto it. And he goes to the marketplace, and it's hard to say no to Rico.
Yeah,
and it was that was great.
There must be a lot of untold stories. A lot of stories. Or maybe one or two untold stories that you might be able to share with us today, maybe in relation to the talent or something that went horribly wrong, or maybe even something in relation to Kerry or James. Have you got anything that's any untold stories? Something?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah. I used to get a regular call every show from Ginge, right? Ginge would ring me relentlessly through the show to talk to me. And I'm going, mate, I'll get back to you. Hang on a second. And we're putting the show to where we're live. And I remember we had...
So those days, to just explain, David, this is when David was CEO, this is when David was head of integration.
No, this is CEO or not CEO, and lad left. He'd still ring.
Even that's David. He still rings me every day, talking about the same stuff, tells me how to run my business. But so we should just explain, in the early days, David lived in a little shitty apartment in Bondi Beach above the Surfboard Place. So
I'd never met him. And I'd never met him. And James Packer rang me and he said, mate, you need to meet this mate of mine, David Gingell. He goes, you guys will get on like a fucking house on fire. He goes, we'll go and have dinner. And so we went and had dinner, the three of us, and we ended up, we've gone back down to Bondi, and James was living with Kate at that stage in the apartments over near the water, and Ginge was above the surf shop. And James had to stop on the way at Kerry's to get something. So it's a bit wide-eyed. So in we go. And I don't think Kerry was there at the time. And we were just downstairs. And he goes, you blokes wait here. Went through the kitchen and it was all a bit, And so Ginge and I are sitting in Kerry's TV room, right, which was pretty amazing. And I had to go to the toilet. And in there was a pith helmet, like a hunting helmet. So I've come out with the hunting helmet on, and Ginge and I are wrestling on the lounge, and James is coming, get the fucking hat off, we're getting out of here. He goes, so we go down to Bondi, and we're having a drink there and around James's place, and he gets a call. I think Kate was coming home, and he goes, you guys got to get out. You got to go. Like, she's coming home. And James had rung my wife, Kaz, earlier that night and we were living on the Central Coast at that stage. And it's a good call to your wife from James Packer to say Glennie mightn't come home tonight. Not she was pretty okay, you know. All right, James, no worries. So James has put the thing in place. He goes, you blokes have got to go. Fuck, where am I going from Bondi to the Central Coast? So Ginge goes, mate, come over and stay at mine. I met him.
So you sort of lived across the road, Tom?
Yeah, down the road. Met him 3 hours ago. So I stay at Ginge's place. I borrow a shirt and have a shower and go to work the next day, and we're besties. I've got to get the shirt back to him. So we become besties. And that's what I always loved about the Packers. You know, there was intent. There was always something, you know, he didn't just go, you blokes will be, you know, good mates. You know, within a couple of years, David was head of Synergy, and we were talking, and I was an important tool in the toolbox to be able to do what he was doing because Kerry had organised that. So, yeah, they did things with intent, which I thought was good.
And David would call you all the time?
100%. You're relentless. Kaz used to call him our third child.
Yeah.
Third child. I had 2 young children at that stage, and he would call at any time just to talk and shoot the shit about anything.
So who would be the best communicator you ever met?
Yeah, he's up there. He's
He's definitely the most consistent or persistent.
Yeah,
communicator.
persistent.
Like he lives in Warne now, as you know,
Yeah.
and he would literally get up this morning. From the time he's got up, I reckon he's made 30 phone calls.
Yeah, totally. Works the phones. Another one who I had a great enormous amount of respect for, who I worked with, was Dennis Hanlon at Sony Music.
At Sony, yeah.
Yeah, like Dennis was the greatest mentor and you know, motivator and networker, probably best networker.
He knew everyone,
mate. He punched so above his weight, and you know, CEOs would say that, like he's spending that much and getting that much value because he was just that. He was that guy networking, and I learned a lot of. I was on his exec team for 3 or 4 years
at Sony
Yep. Music, and learned a lot from him. Yeah, I got a lot of respect for Dennis.
At what point did you? I remember Aaron Molan joined the team. You were still there then. Yep.
Oh yeah, Kenny Sutcliffe came down to my office, the great male model from Mudgee, and said, "Mate, you need to have a look at this girl up in the newsroom, Erin Molan. She's great. You know, you got to have
Kenny Sutcliffe from Mudgee. He does live at Mudgee, by the way.
Yeah, he's the male model from Mudgee.
He actually lives there though. He's there now.
He's gone back. Yeah. So, and again, another great night. I love Kenny.
Great wide water sports commentator.
Mate, yeah, unreal. So Kenny came down and told me about this girl I should have a look at. At that stage, you know, I think it was I'd gone back.
She was a journalist, though.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I left the show around 2005 and then went off and did other things, 3 or 4 years at Sony Music. And then Ginge got me back to do the Warne thing, right?
We'll talk about that in a
Shane
moment.
Warne thing, yeah. Shane Warne show. And on the back of that, he said, mate, Footy Show's in trouble. Would you have another crack at it? And I said, yeah, okay. So I did 5 years, 5 Logies, ka-ching, right?
5 Logies.
5 Logies every year in 5 years.
Maybe you could you used to go to the Logies events?
Yeah.
Down in Melbourne at the Crown.
Many times there,
Yeah.
yes.
So you maybe just give us a bit of colour around what they're like.
Oh, mate. Well, back in the day, we used to send a camera crew. I used to send Terry Hill.
Terry Hill.
The late, great Terry Hill.
Who's passed away, by the way.
The late, great Terry Hill.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Jesus. So I'd send Terry down to the Logies in his gold lame jacket that he would wear at Dapto with the great Jack Elsgood for fashions in the field at Dapto Dogs, which Singo was a nod to Singo because Singo used to do the live greyhounds on his show back in the day with rabbits calling it. So, you know, mate, full circle. And Terry would go into the bathroom. I remember he got Kerry O'Brien in the bathroom one night at the Logies, and Kerry wanted to
from the ABC.
Yeah, and Kerry started like shaping up and was going to throw him at him. It's great. Oh, mate, fuck, you're not going to take Terry Hill on.
Good luck.
Good luck indeed. I would love to have seen that go a bit further.
I one time when I was sponsored State of Origin, I was up in Queensland, and we won or lost, can't remember, but we were in some bar in Brisbane, like pretty late at night. This is in the old days, and Terry Hill and Spud started shaping up against each other. Good looks, really.
Terry.
Mate, I jumped in between because I'm responsible. I think I don't want this to go awfully wrong, apart from the fact I was there as well. Then I actually jumped in between the two of them. Like, actually somehow got in between the two of them, both giants.
Giants. Yeah, Terry was a big bloke.
Scary moment. Like,
yeah.
They were both frothing, like, would have been. And by the way, they're in the same team.
Yeah, I know.
Like, it just goes to show why we don't let them out.
That's
players anymore. So let's go back. Sorry, I just had a memory of that, but let's just go back to.
Logies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they were just, there was something in that room. You know, you go into that room and it's like a Vegas casino. There's no windows, not enough oxygen, and everyone's fucked up within an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just something in that room, in that Logies room.
And those 5 Logies, where do they sit these days?
I got a couple of them.
Yeah, you kept something?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Good.
Yeah, I think Fat's got a couple. I know Matt Callender, the late Matt Callender,
Yeah.
who we'll talk a little bit about the Mark Hughes Foundation.
Yeah.
You know, I think Matt got 1 or 2. So yeah, they're around. Yeah, but
Let's go back to so post that between gigs though, as at the Footy Show EP, you did Warne.
Yeah, so I'd done.
What was that about?
So I'd finished up at Sony, and Ginge rang me, and you know, and he said, mate, he said, I've got a new project on the bubble. He said it's
At 9.
At 9, yeah. He said, I can't remember the word he used, but it was, you know, difficult, interesting talent to handle. And he said, you're the guy to do that. He said, you interested? I said, mate, you got me already. So he said, right, we're going to Melbourne to meet him. We went down to Melbourne, and it's Warne, you know, the great Shane Warne. And we had dinner down there, and we discussed this idea of a chat show that he'd wanted to do. He wanted to do interviews just like this, one-on-ones, which is a great lost art form of someone to, you know, you do it well. There are people who can do it, and it's a great lost art form, just the one-on-one chat.
I don't know why they don't have it on television.
Me neither. Mate, we all watch
9:30 at night, even if it's late.
Yeah, we all watch the podcasts while we not work on free to air. Anyway, smarter blokes running it than us, mate.
Totally.
So, you know, we had this idea, or they had this idea of this, you know, show that Shane was going to open up his address book, and we're going to get some talent. And
His address book would have been unbelievable.
Unbelievable, mate. We had, like, I'll tell you who we got, but who we didn't get, who were trying to get on, was Elton John, Mick Jagger. I had their people calling me going, mate, we're trying to move something around, so that they loved him. They just
what was the appeal of him?
a lot of them were cricket fans. The Poms loved him.
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of them were cricket fans. Like Mick's a cricket fan, and Elton, I think Elton likes cricket, but Elton just loved him because he's a naughty bloke. But you know, there was that appeal of, again, the authenticity, and what you saw was what you got. He's a real bloke.
Yeah.
You know, and so we thought, okay, well, this can work. So we lined up interviews with Sting, with Chris Martin from Coldplay, Susan Boyle.
Remember Susan Boyle? She was the singer.
She was the singer. I'll tell you a little bit about that moment. And then Jeremy Clarkson. You know, Top Gear was the hottest show in the world at that stage. So this is the sort of talent that we're going over to get. You know, so they were big names. And I thought, okay, well, this is all going to work. And Shane said, you know,
where was it? Where was it held? Here?
So we did half in Sydney, half in Melbourne. It was scheduled for 5 episodes over the Ashes series of, I think it was 2011-12, around that era. So whenever that Ashes series in Australia was. And at the time, there was a great push for Warne to make a comeback. We were fucked. And everyone's going, Warne's got to come back. Warne's got to come back. So we would land in the UK and be swamped by the Paps. It's like literally like I've never seen, like car chases. We're getting he had a driver over there who I think was Madonna's driver as well, of course. And this guy was like losing people, and like it was full on. But little did they know that at the same time as all this is happening, under their nose, is Shane is having his moment with Elizabeth Hurley, which is all this story is right there under their nose, and they're all coming up and Shane going to make a comeback. He's going to make a comeback. It's like, boys, look a little harder. Just look a little
wrong
harder.
Story.
Yeah, you're chasing the wrong story here. So we went over there. We did 2 trips over there.
Did you meet her?
Yeah. We did 2 trips over there together. First trip where he said, mate, you can't meet her on the first trip. So no problem at all. That's fine. So they went out to dinner with Hugh Grant and her, and they're still mates apparently. So they had their little night out. And then we went over to Turin to do Sting at a basketball stadium in Turin. And so before Sting goes on, he's given us like an hour downstairs, just this, you know, a couple of chairs, my cameras, me, Shane, him. That's it. And I'm a massive Police fan. So like I'm completely fangirling with Sting, loving him. So we do the interview and he goes, you know, guys, come up and enjoy the show, right? So great, fantastic. So we go up to the show and he's got these seats that you're in that, you know, we went to a show recently of his out here, Kaz and I, my wife and I, and we were in literally the same seats. So they're like Sting seats. I think so he knows where you are, right? So he's like singing to Shane and I. And we have through the fuck, how good's this? And we get to interval and Shane's just, everything for Shane was a dart.
Yeah.
You know, he measured things in darts. Like he'd go, mate, how far is it back?
6-dart trip.
how far from Terminal 1 to Terminal 2? It's 2 darts, right? Perfect. So he measured everything in cigarettes. So he knew to go out and have a ciggy in the interval. He's going, mate, let's go. We've seen half the show. He was very, on. It was like, let's go. Next thing. I said, mate, we can't go. I said, mate, he's fucking singing Roxanne to us. Like we're literally 7 rows back and he's eyeballing us. We can't go. There's going to be 2 empty seats. And Sting walks past. He goes, hey, you enjoying the show, guys? The show goes, oh, it's fucking great, mate. Can't wait for part 2. Great, fantastic. So we do that. And we go off. And so we come back, and so we knock over that interview, and then we go back the second time. And I'm going to come back to Sting right at the end because it's a great yarn. So we do the second trip over there, and the last day we're doing it. So the second last day, we go out to dinner. So it's Elizabeth, Shane, me, one of her minders, and I think Shane's UK manager. That was it. Like we go to some restaurant in Chelsea, and we come upstairs, and there's a red light in a car across the road. Right? And Shane goes, mate, you got to go and check that out. Fuck, do I have to check it out for, mate? It's a Russian mafia in Chelsea with a sight on me. I'm going, mate, you got to go and check it out. Go and check it out, mate. Could be it's a Paps. And I'm coming out of airports with Shane, and it's global, like the vision. Shane Warne, is he going to make a comeback? And my missus is messaging me going, can you just stand up a bit taller? You're the world's smallest bodyguard. Like, you're all over the news with Shane. So it's like I'm saying, mate, I'm not your fucking minder. I'm here as your producer. So I go out and have a look, and I can't see what's in the car, but, I think it's probably Paps, So there's a whole clandestine operation to get them out of the restaurant, and away we go. And so we get back to the hotel. Next day in the morning, we've got Susan Boyle in the hotel for the interview, Jeremy Clarkson at the Beeb in the afternoon down at Shepherd's Bush, airport, home. That's the day. So I get a text very early in the morning from Shane, mate, it's your turn to get breakfast this morning, a little joint around the road, he liked breakfast. And this morning, it's for 3 of us. Okay, all right. So I'm going up to the room, and Elizabeth's obviously stayed. So Shane answers the door in a doona, looking very happy. I go, hello, mate. How are you going? He goes, come in. And then go into his suite, and he's got the mad suite, and we sit down and get the breakfast out. Elizabeth Hurley walks out in a long black catsuit, long sleeve,
Oh my God.
long legs, black catsuit, and just stands in the London morning sun and says, what a great night last night was. I go, you're talking about the dinner? So there she is. So I said, look, we've just got to do some work. No, go for it. So we're writing questions, and just the 2 of us. So she starts helping with the questions and chiming in, which is great. And she's saying to Shane, now, Shane, when you're with Susan Boyle, you just flirt with her a bit. Flirt with her. Susan Boyle, just anyone, Google. There's no flirting. No flirting.
No.
So Shane, we're getting down there, getting set up for the interview. I look over, and he's got his hand on a leg, and he's
with Susan Boyle.
I go, mate, you got a second? Just quickly. Just need a quick word. What the fuck are you doing? He goes, I'm flirting. I said, mate, she said flirt, not...
Don't touch.
Don't touch. So we do the interview with Susan, and she's wonderful. It was a great interview. And Shane was really good at these chats. Like, he was good. He'd do his research, but he was engaging, and they loved him, So we do the interview, and we go back, and we got a couple of hours to kill before we check out. And she's still in the hotel, Elizabeth, right? So I said, look, I'm just going over to Camden. I'll come back. Car's picking us up at 2. I'll see you then, mate. I'll be back about 1:30. So I get back, and the whole hotel staff are standing out the front. There's 3 fire engines, right? And the staff, there's a little boutique hotel we stay at, and they're like giving me the look, like something's going on here. So I'm sort of walking towards the hotel, and there's a little alleyway. I hear this, Glenn. And it's Shane and Elizabeth up this little alley. And she's, pretty off the charts at this stage. The Paps, they're smoking us out. They're smoking us out.
Smoking.
Right? So they've got onto it, the Paps, and they know she's in there. So someone's called in a fake fire call to get
everyone out.
Everyone evacuated. So they're up in a side, and there's a staff member going, Miss Hurley, Mr. Warne, we need to be moving you out of here. They're going, fuck you, we're not moving anywhere, right? We know what's going on. So Shane got Elizabeth out somehow, out the back, right? And we jump in the car, and we're going down towards the BBC at Shepherd's Bush. And we're in the back seat, another Indonesian volcano moment. He's in there on the darts. And she rings. And I can hear the phone call. She rings and she goes, they've got the photos. News of the World have got the photos. And someone had got a photo of her and him having a kiss in a hotel foyer, I think the night they went out with Hugh Grant. and they were going to publish it. They'd given her the nod that they're going to publish this story. It's breaking. So the story in the next 24 hours will be out there that they're on. So Warnie's like, fuck, we pull into the BBC, and this interview to get with Jeremy Clarkson, as I said before, like at that stage, Top Gear's the hottest show in the world.
I remember it.
Hottest show in the world around 2011, 2012. So it's a big interview. And we get there, he's over, and Shane's gone over there in the car park on his phone. He's texting, he's on his phone, he's smoking.
Love the text.
Loved a text, right? And he's by this stage completely off chops. He's gone elsewhere mentally. And Clarkson arrives, and he's a prickly character.
Is he?
Oh yeah, just So I've gone up to him and I've gone, introduced myself and said, Jeremy, I don't know you, you don't know me. I said, but I reckon we're all on the same page as blokes here, mate. And I said, I can't tell you what's going down right now with old mate over there, but there's a bit of shit about to hit the fan, and in about 24 hours, it's all going to make sense. He might be a bit off his game. I can just ask you, please, just be as giving as you can be in this interview. We've all worked very hard to get here. Leave it with me, he says, right? Gives the best interview ever, Clarkson. Massive respect. He just turned it on, helped Warnie through it. It was great. So off to the airport we go. We fly to Abu Dhabi. And of course, we're in the smoking lounge, the first class smoking lounge, and it's midnight. There's no one there. It's just Shane and I. He's sitting 10, 15 feet across from me on another lounge, and there's no one around. And he's going to Melbourne. I'm going to Sydney from there. So we're splitting up there. And through the door, comes in this arrowhead of Arab blokes in the full Rock the Casbah outfits.
My God.
Right? And they've got a bloke in the middle. So there's like six.
A wedge.
A wedge with this bloke in the middle with the worry beads, the cigar, the lot. And they fan open, and she's looking at Shane, he's looking at me, he's looking at Shane, and he comes over and he says to me, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "Is that Mr. Shane Warne over there?" And I said, yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, please don't arrest me.
And he goes, "I am the Sheikh of Oman.
Oh, my God.
I would like to meet him." I said, "Just a moment, Sheikh. Let me just see what I can do." I said, "Shane." He goes, "What?" He's got the head down on the phone. "What?" I said, "Mate." I said, "Sheikh of Oman, Sheikh of Tweak. Sheikh of Tweak, Sheikh of Oman." Shane goes, "G'day." And puts his hand back down on his phone. And I said, "I'm sorry, mate. He's a little preoccupied at the moment." And the Sheikh just shuffles off. My flight gets called, and that was it. I didn't see Warnie again. We got back, and my wife was at the airport, and just eyes wide open. And I might have mentioned to her some of the stuff that had been going on, and she just goes, "It's out there." I went, "Thought it might be." So in that space of flying back from Abu Dhabi to Sydney,
It got released.
Yeah, released, and it was everywhere, mate. We all remember what happened.
So how do you, when you've got a million stories, and by the way, you're one of the greatest storytellers I've ever met. But you are. But you've got a million stories, and you tell them perfectly. But do you ever sort of sit down to yourself and say, "Fuck, will I ever experience that type of life again?"
100%. Yeah, it was a wonderful moment in time. Some of the.
But do you think you can never experience that type of thing again? Do you think it's possible? I don't mean Glenn Pallister at your age, but like a new version of Glenn Pallister, young guy. Does that sort of stuff exist anymore?
I think in today's terms, it's a little different. I think that obviously mobile phones and internet and social media have changed experiences out there for everybody. I mean, sportsmen will tell you that from what they could do back 30 years ago to what
Without being detected.
100%. And unless you had your Minolta or your Kodak, you didn't capture a moment. You lived in that moment, and you told the story about that. There was no one there to record that moment. Whereas I think now we're a little more obsessed with, capturing the moment. And so, look, television in my world has changed dramatically. I don't think for the better in free-to-air television.
It's less entertaining.
100%, mate. And I also think that, the attention to detail that we used to see has just disappeared.
And also cancel culture.
Oh,
Like, it doesn't matter left or right.
Yeah.
I mean, like Jimmy Kimmel recently, but then the people on the other side, the right side, they can get cancelled too.
Yeah. I actually just recently, I did about 6 months with the project.
On Channel 10?
Yeah, I was broadcast producer for them here in Sydney. A mate of mine in Melbourne was Rove's business partner and called me and said, the EP flies up every Sunday to do the show. Could you do it? I said, I'd love to. So I didn't have to do content. It was just purely looking after the talent, getting the show to air, getting it out on time. What an incredibly talented bunch of on-camera and off-camera people that team was. I was so disappointed to see 10 pull that. I really didn't have any history with the show. I'd done 6 months on it. But people like Sarah Harris, Hamish McDonald,
Yeah.
Waleed Ali,
Great talent.
Oh, sensational talent and talent who cared, who would come in and do their research and debate things about how they should attack it. And, that show got pillared a bit for being a bit left wing, a bit woke at times. But mate, it was a really good bunch of people.
But the audience doesn't appreciate this stuff anymore.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
They don't appreciate talent.
No,
Yeah,
and very sad to see that go. And again, then up pops a cheaper version of a news show because it's bean counters running television and not creatives.
And it's also about the money.
Yeah.
We're only earning this amount of income, and that's all we can afford to produce. And
Yeah.
you pay shit, you get monkeys.
That's it, 100%.
Yeah, I cannot leave a conversation with you without talking about Matty Johns and Joey Johns, Andrew
Yes.
Johns, the two brothers, and obviously Reg Reagan.
Yes.
Tell me about Matty Johns. Let's start with Matty.
Okay. I just did a gig with him about 3 weeks ago. We both did the. I got a phone call from Craig Johnson, the Liverpool player,
Ex-soccer
Aussie,
player,
Aussie who went over and played for Liverpool,
who had the famous for the boots.
Yes, invented the Predator.
Yep.
And Craig and I became mates back in the day. He was a Wild Sports reporter for a little while.
Really?
Yeah, under David Hill when Hilly was running Wild Sports, and so we sort of met back then. And I got a call from him about 3 months ago saying, I'm going to do a live show in Newcastle telling my story. Matty Johns is going to be in it with me. We need someone to pull it all together. You interested? I went, fuck, am I what? Liverpool fan, love Matty. So, yeah, we just did a gig together a couple of weeks ago. It was fantastic. So,
and Matty, most people don't realise, is one of the smartest people you'll ever meet.
Absolutely.
And well-researched.
Yeah.
And with an incredible memory.
Mate, he
can remember stuff
yes.
that he experienced in the 1990s.
Well,
ask him about a singer or a group or a song or words or...
Well, doing this gig, he came out and he just did a little opening monologue and he said, I'm just going to wing it, Glennie. I said, yeah, great, fantastic. And he cited Craig as his hero, and he said, so he knew everything about Craig. It was one of the first books, one of the early books he read as a sportsman was Craig's book. He knew everything about him and he was just pulling things out. And while Craig's telling stories and that Matt was able to bring him back because he knew exactly where that story was going. And yeah, he was fantastic with it. But mate, yeah, I knew the boys back in the day when they were playing, and Matt was playing for Cronulla. He'd actually gone over to the UK, and Joey and I were probably tighter at that stage than Matt and I. But we were all good mates, and they'd come on the show and they'd do stuff, but they were players, But I'd really sort of identified Matt as being something. He was something out of the box. And he went over to the UK to play, and we all kept in touch while he was over there, Joey and I with him and me with Matt. And when he came back, he was playing at the Sharks. And I said to him, I said, mate, when you stop playing, you've got a gig.
Was he doing skits then?
Yes. So we started him. So he came back and we started doing Reg. And Reg had been a character that he'd had at a Mad Monday up there at the Knights. And so we just polished it a bit. And when I say polish, fuck, can you polish Reg Reagan? We just made it TV worthy and relevant and let him go. We had I had a great producer with him, a guy called Simon Steele. They'd sit down and they'd do a bit of stuff together. They'd run it by me and I'd let them go. And away they'd go. So that was always fantastic. And then he was going out to do I had Ryan Girdler going out to do a Their House at Jason Stevens' place.
From Cronulla.
Yeah, from Cronulla. And Jason, great man, lived at Brighton Les Sands overlooking the airport there. And I just thought it needed something in that segment. And Matt was in the office hanging around, doing something, I can't remember. And I said, mate, why don't we do a character like that Dave Grohl character in Learn to Fly? And he's got the moustache and he's like a gay flight steward. And he goes, mate, leave it with me. and Trent, the flight steward, was born. And there's a shot there of Gerds and Jason sitting on the lounge talking. And the first time we ever saw Trent on television, the camera just pans, and Matthew's lying at the other end of the lounge with his pants around his ankles, going, "Hi, Jace." And there was Trent. Trent was born. So, mate, he started doing these characters, while he was playing. And I'd said to him, "Mate, there's a gig. There's a gig." And I could see more in him than just a bit player. And he did his neck and playing. He had an injury playing, I think it was his neck, playing with the Sharks. And I rang Ginge and I rang John Fordham, the late, great John, and who was his manager at the time. And I said to him, "We need a meeting pretty quick to talk about Matthew's future." And Ginge said, "Mate, we're going to get him." And we got John in literally 2 days after the injury and did a deal. And Matt gave me a handwritten note on my 40th at Peacock Gardens when he appeared, unbeknownst to me that my wife and he had organised him to come in as Reg Reagan. He was already there as a guest, and he slipped away and came back in as Reg. But he gave me a little handwritten note, and he said, "Mate, without you, I would be a stop-go man at the Cessnock Council. And he'd be the best fucking stop-go man you'd ever meet."
And what about, and I need to talk about Beau Ryan. Like, Bowie was a card. Like,
Yeah.
But by the way, out there.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Like, Beau won't mind if I said, but like, he could even be a bit neurodivergent if there is
Anything that ends in D, he's got.
Yeah, he's out there.
Yep,
Like,
totally.
complete.
And I inherited Beau. When I went back, he'd been there, so he'd been well sort of prepped and started. But mate, he was good talent to grow. And I saw him on a bigger stage, which is why we put him in front of movie stars and The Rock, and The Rock loves him.
Really?
Yeah, mate. The Rock and Kevin Hart did a video for me for my 50th because Beau organised it.
No.
Yeah. Like they love him. Like, and we only ever had.
What is it about him that's so sort of magnetic about Beau
Well, I
Ryan?
think it might be what you mentioned. I think there's something quite disarming about
Yeah.
him. It's almost his enthusiasm is almost childlike.
Especially when you
at times.
talk to him, not sure if he's taking the piss or
No.
he's fanning him.
No, but mate, he's a hard worker.
Yeah, he
Like,
works hard, does he?
Yeah. Like there's never a problem. Like you send him out on a bow nose, and they'd be out there for 4 hours shooting, right? Because he didn't think we'd got enough good stuff, and he'd be the guy going, "We need to do more." Like, whereas the Fat would do 20 minutes, drop the mic, and gone.
Yeah, go on to golf. Go and play
See him
golf.
for another week. He'd be on the golf course.
What was it like when were you there when Fat got moved on?
Yeah. So mate,
What was that like?
Okay, so that was the end for me too. That was a very difficult period. We'd done the end of the 2017 show. We did that at the ICC. Big crowd, great show. All went off for a couple of weeks break, and I got a phone call to come up.
So at the end of the grand final.
Yeah, grand final. Yeah, so we'd done the grand final footy show at the ICC.
Yep.
We'd season finished. We took a bit of a break. I got a phone call to go and see the then CEO and another senior management guy.
Ginge is gone.
Ginge is gone. Yeah, Ginge is gone. And they said to me, "Look, we're changing the footy show around." I went, "Okay, righto. We're putting it back under Wide World of Sports, and you won't be running it." I went, "Right. And we'd like to offer you something else if you're interested, but you won't be doing the footy show. And there'll be no role for Fatty and no role for Daryl Broman. But, you can have a bit of a think about what you want to do. And would you mind calling them and letting them know?" How's that for an arsehole act?
Mm.
So anyway, I went, "Okay, no problem at all." So I had about a 3-minute think about it and thought, "Well, mate, 9's not for me anymore." And that was the end of 2017. I had to ring Fat the next day. He was on holidays in the US with his beautiful wife, Kim. And I had to ring him and tell him that the decision had been made that the footy show would be continuing, but without him. And his services were no longer required on the show. And, mate, he hit him like a ton of bricks. And
But that was also the end of your period then, too.
yeah. So I decided then, I said, "Look, this is not for me. I'll leave as well." So I exited and
I remember having a beer with you and Ginge at Byron Bay.
no, that was 2005.
Oh, that was the first time.
That was 2005.
The first time you left.
Yeah, that was the first time I left. Yeah.
So it wasn't, because I was trying to work out which period it was.
Yeah, that was 2005.
After the first time you left.
Yeah. And that's where.
So how did you feel?
I felt very disappointed, and I felt that when it came back the next year for its final year, it should not have been called the Footy Show because it wasn't the Footy Show. and Fatty was the Footy Show, whether you love him or hate him.
Yeah.
Fatty was the Footy Show, and I felt it was really poor form that after 24 years, we as a collective, particularly Fatty, weren't given the chance to firstly say thank you to all those people who had been with us, whether they were staff, whether they were fans, viewers for 24 years. And we had the chance. They knew what was happening. They could have told us and said, say your goodbyes on the grand final show and do it with a bit of class, but there was no class.
Well, now here's your chance because, mate, we're getting a lot of feedback on all sorts of channels about people saying, bring back the Footy Show. So what do you reckon about that? Do you reckon we should bring back the Footy Show?
Look, I personally think there's and someone will steal this idea, but I personally think there's a vehicle for it in grand final week, that we should still be doing the grand final Footy Show on Thursday night, and pay Fat whatever he wants, just to do one show a year, and we bring out all the boys and we do a grand final Footy Show at wherever venue that creates that magnificent in atmosphere and excitement for the grand final. And I'm available to do that, but as I said, I'm sure someone else will end up doing it for a lot cheaper. But I don't know if it can come back as a weekly show. As we mentioned before, I think there's too many people who love to complain and get offended very easily these days, and that's a real shame. And to do the show the way it should be done, Fatty tells the story when he does public speaking now. It's finally hit him what the show meant to people, and it took him 6 months of retirement. I used to say to him, mate, this show means so much to me. Like, oh, mate, it's just a show. And he says he'd drive home after it and he'd forget about it, and the next thing he'd think about it was when I rang him to annoy him to do an Andy ad or something the next week. He didn't think about it. But since he's retired, and you're saying about this, it's genuine and tangible, and he now feels it, where people are coming up to him and saying, I saw him and Sterlo the other night at one of their speaking gigs, and they talk about it. And Fatty says, people are coming up to me and saying, Thursday night was when I got together with my dad, and I'd go over to my dad's place and watch the Footy Show, or it was when our family got together to watch the Footy Show.
It was like me with Benny Hill, mate. I used to do that with my family,
Yeah.
and I used to do it with my kids for the Footy Show.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a place. I remember David Leckie got me one week after the show to come over on a Friday night and have a beer and a bit of dinner and sit with him and watch Friday Night Footy with him in his TV room, because he wanted me to know where he sat on Thursday nights to watch my show, which was pretty fucking cool. I thought that was good. But, it meant a lot to people. And I think it's more the memory now. I don't think you could sustain a weekly version of it and do it justice.
But one big event, like you just said.
Yeah, I think so.
Towards the end of the year, maybe.
Oh, mate, can you imagine the ratings on it?
It'd be huge.
Huge.
And bring back all the old talent.
Totally.
Just bring them all back for one night.
One night only. No one's asking for a commitment, which none of them want to give now. I still keep in touch with them all. I was texting with the great Chief yesterday. Those guys. Oh, one of the world's greatest men and, great leaders. And I heard Matty Johns talking recently about one of the quotes that when they went out for that 97 grand final was Chief turned to the team and he said, they don't send people off in grand finals, follow me. What about that? Doesn't that get the going?
Well, Glenn, mate, it's so good finally to get you in here, mate. And I've just had a ball listening to all your stories. Like, I'm sure our audience is going to have a great time listening to these stories. And by the way, for me, it was an era in my life, as you say, probably never to be revisited, but an era in my life which has a significant part of my life and a significant part of a lot of Australians' lives. And all of us have got great memories, fond memories. Thanks for sharing your stories, mate. You've been a legend. What you brought to Australia, it was legendary. Really, seriously. And I appreciate it, mate.
Thank you, mate. It's an absolute honour to sit here and do this with you.
Thanks,
buddy.